it is 6:01. We will open up the Board of Adjustments meeting for Wednesday, May 25th, 2022. First order is a roll call. Let's start from my right and go down.
Susan Hinton.
Kevin Show.
Jerry Spitell.
Brad O'Donnell.
Keith Martinson.
All right, now that that's done, it is still 6:01. Let's open up the floor to public comments. This is for citizens wishing to address the Board of Adjustments for items not on the agenda today. Is anyone signed up?
We have no one signed up, but I'll make a quick comment. Wanted to introduce everybody to our new city secretary, Desiree Adair. This is her first Board of Adjustment meeting, so she'll be helping out the board, so we're excited to have her. Also want to make a quick intro to Brandon Melland. He is here with us on Zoom, and he is a planner with K-Freeze. They have stepped in the interim to help us since Carrie has left, so he'll be kind of filling in for the staff role during tonight's meeting. So,
Excellent.
Yes.
All right, well then let's close the public comments at 6:02. Go to the consent agenda. It's the discussion of possible actions on the minutes from April 19th. Does anyone make a motion to approve the minutes?
I would so move.
Second.
Let's see, do we need to do a roll call on approval of the minutes?
No, sir.
All right, well then, let's vote to approve the minutes. All for it, say aye.
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 Aye. All right, minutes were approved. Sorry, this is new still. I'm trying to get it down.
You're doing a great job.
All right, let's move on. It is 6:03 to the public hearing. Item number 3 is public hearing, discussion, and possible action on a request for variance from section 107-36 to allow a driveway to occupy the setback at 2 Chris Cove and Lot A Alimo acres. Okay. So do we have a presentation from? Okay. If you could just state your name and who you are with.
Sure. My name is Linda Sullivan. I work for a permitting and land use assistance company called CleanTag, and I'm here with Aaron Montoya, who is the architect for the project, for Jerry and Von Brock, who are the owners of the property. They planned on being here tonight, but they had a new grandchild born, and somehow that seemed more enticing than coming to a Board of Adjustment meeting. To each their own. So we'll be able to answer any questions you might have, and they are available by phone. If there's anything that we can't address, we can reach out to them. The application in front of you tonight is for a total of 4 variances. 2 for the Laurel Lane lot. That does not have a number on the address. It's a landlocked lot. And also 2 for 2 Chris Cove. Those lots are adjacent to each other, and they're also adjacent to 2905 Stratford Lane, which is in the City of Austin jurisdiction. And all 3 of those lots are owned by the Brocks. So the variances were requesting permission for a driveway to encroach into the interior and rear side, the interior side and rear setbacks for these properties, to allow the driveway to encroach into those setbacks for both of those lots. Bit of history on the properties. The Brocks purchased 2905 Stratford and Laura Lane together from the same owner in 2012. And then when the 2 Chris Cove lot came on the market in 2014, they purchased that also with the express intent of providing safer access to their property on 2905 Stratford. The current egress on 2905 Stratford is on a blind curve, has challenging topography, and also has a very limited frontage on Stratford Lane that does not allow for a redesign to make that egress safer to the property. So they purchased Chris Cove because it has that cul-de-sac access. It's a much safer way to get into the property. But as life does get in the way, they are only now coming with this proposal 10 years later after owning all of those properties. They've raised their family there, and they're ready to move on with the design. So the spirit of the code restricting encroachment into the setbacks for driveways, as we understand it, is to preserve privacy and prevent negative impacts on adjacent lots. And all of these impacts would be within the interior lot lines of this property. So there's no negative impact on any neighboring lots that are owned by other individuals, only impacts the Brocks properties. It's our position that the current design offers both privacy to the adjacent lots and reasonable use of the 3 properties that are currently owned by the Brocks. So that's pretty much it. We appreciate the opportunity to speak to you tonight, and if you have any questions, let us know. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. And then I believe there was a presentation by the interim city development assistant. I forget what that. What is his name again?
Thank you. My name is Brandon Milan.
Brandon. Okay, Brandon.
And thank you, Mr. Chair. And glad to be with you all tonight and happy to assist. Yeah, absolutely. As the city manager pointed out, stepping in as the interim, assisting with planning and zoning efforts. So I prepared a staff report for y'all's assistance tonight. I think the previous presentation, provided some of the high points for y'all in terms of what the applicants are wanting to accomplish on the property. And so my role is helping to understand what they're asking for and also helping to present that in terms of what the code provides in terms of guidance to the board and y'all's decision-making process and applying the criteria of the code. And so, as was just said in the last presentation, the applicants are planning to put a driveway on the 2 Chris Cove property in order to access the 2905 Stratford property and also to provide access to Lot A, Alamo Acres, which, as she mentioned, is the landlocked piece of land. But in this case, however, the city code limits the location of driveways to 5 feet of either side of a lot line, of course, 10 feet from the rear lot line. And so they're planning for those driveways to encroach. So in this situation, the applicant really has 2 options to move forward. One option is to request the variance, which is what they're doing and which is why we're here this evening considering it. And the other option is to potentially replat all 3 lots into 1 lot because the setbacks are essentially a function of the lot lines. And so replatting the lot into 1 lot and eliminating those lot lines would essentially eliminate the setbacks which the lot lines create. So that's from a planning standpoint, that's what the applicants are wanting to do, and those are the options that they have provided to them by the city codes and processes. And so, again, part of what my job is to look at the criteria that the city code has established for the board in evaluating variance requests. And in the staff report that was provided to you, the city code states that prior to granting a variance in a residential district in concert with the findings required in the subsection, the general requirements for providing variance, it states the board must find the following. And so what I did was provide kind of a planning level analysis for assistance for y'all. And of course, it's y'all's prerogative. Y'all are the board members, and it's y'all's job to apply this criteria as you see appropriate. But for convenience, took a planning analysis and provided some findings there. So the first criteria is it states that the board must find affirmative to is number 1, a special individual reason makes the literal enforcement chapter result in an unnecessary hardship. And so from a planning standpoint, looking at the code, the literal enforcement doesn't result in an unnecessary hardship because, as I mentioned, the option still exists for the applicants to replat the property into 1 and essentially remove those lot lines. So in this case, removing the lot lines would remove the driveway setbacks and eliminate the problem. So the finding on there was negative from a planning standpoint. 2, granting the variance would be in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the chapter and not be injurious to adjoining properties or the neighborhood or otherwise be detrimental to the public. So again, the finding there was negative. KFA does not find that granting the variance will be in harmony with the general purpose of the chapter as it is the purpose of platting to address such issues, not variances. It's the purpose of platting to prepare a piece of land for how it is being redeveloped, not variances from a planning standpoint, of course. 3, The granting of the variance will not be detrimental to public health, safety, or welfare or injurious to the property in the area. On that one, yeah, just from a planning standpoint finding, and I think as the last presenter pointed out, the only thing that this, if the variance were approved, it doesn't have any impact on surrounding properties. It's only internal to the properties that the owners own. So yeah, the finding on that one was affirmative. And 4, almost get through these here. There are special circumstances or conditions such as topography, natural obstructions, aesthetic or environmental conditions, considerations affecting the land involved, such as strict application of the provisions of the chapter would pose unnecessary hardship, which is created by the literal enforcement of the provisions of this chapter. Again, similar to the first one, negative. KFA finds that the specific circumstances on this, there aren't any special circumstances or conditions. It's just the matter involves the general repurposing of 3 separate residential lots now into 1 residential homestead. 5, the granting of the variance will not have the effect of preventing the orderly development of other land in the area in accordance with the provisions of this chapter. That is an affirmative finding. In this case, as we mentioned, what's being requested is pretty internal to this property, not externally affecting other properties. So that finding is affirmative. From a planning standpoint, the granting of the variance would not have the effect of preventing the orderly development of other surrounding properties. And lastly, if applicable, the last criteria isn't applicable. So as you can see there, from a planning review standpoint, just purely providing kind of an objective analysis to the board for your assistance. There was a finding of negative on a few of these, but affirmative as well. So yeah, hopefully that helps you all in your decision-making process from a planning standpoint, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yes, thank you. That was quite a thorough look into it, especially from our point of view. Well, given that, did y'all have any more? Is anyone else presenting? Okay, well, given that, I'd like to give y'all an opportunity to kind of discuss, maybe talk about this a little bit more before we start closing things down. From basically what my understanding is that there is another way for you to do this. And so for there to be a hardship, the code of ordinances would have to be preventing you from doing it another way, because there is another way of doing it. So if you could maybe present to us what your hardship is for why you can't replat.
Well, it was our understanding that.
Please use the microphone.
Sorry. It was our understanding that replatting would be tricky because of the municipality lines, that we would be going through City of Austin and Rollingwood, and that it might not satisfy what we need to satisfy because that municipal line would still create the need for a variance, because although the lots would be united, there would still be a need for the 2 municipalities to agree to allow that setback to be encroached, the setback between the 2. So we didn't dig into that as deeply because this seemed like the less restrictive path to get to that end result. And so the hardship was the access, but replatting is, yes, an option, but it wasn't a clear option. Because when we talked to both Cary and to City of Austin, they said, ooh, we've never seen anything like this before. We don't know if this is going to be as simple as just a regular replatting. We'd have to look into that. So that's why we're here.
Okay, so you didn't really, you didn't try to progress down the...
We were advised by city staff, both Rollingwood and City of Austin, to go this route first.
Okay, all right, cool.
Charles, do you have any input on that, as far as maybe replotting with 2 municipalities?
It's possible, I don't know how, yes, it would take the 2 municipalities to get together as to how that would work, but it's possible. It's not impossible.
And it's not, is there any issue with replatting the 2 Rollingwood properties together?
No, not at all. Yeah,
Okay.
that would be easy.
Did you look at possibly doing that to remove some of these issues? Or same path?
It's the same path, and it wouldn't remove the issue because that wouldn't, combining the two rolling wood lots would not allow access to the Stratford lot. And the Stratford lot is the one that has the dangerous egress that they're trying to.
Okay.
They can't abandon it because it needs to be there for EMS. But when we reached out to emergency vehicles, they said, well, you know, we would only use that driveway if we were instructed to, and if that was the quickest way to get to the property. But they said they would prefer a safer access as well, because the topography is so steep that they said we would probably come around and use the Chris Cove access anyway. We did look into a UDA, so I don't know if that's possible over municipal lines either. And, you know, when we did start digging into ways to make this possible, the reason that City of Austin and Rollingwood both saying, I don't know, I mean, this is, you know, that's not what you want to hear from reviewers, seasoned reviewers who have been there for 15 years, when they say, oh, geez, like that, you know, there wasn't a clear and easy path to it. And so they were all like, well, have you tried a variance? Like, I really think that's the way to, so that's where the weight was coming. You know, everybody's saying, no, I think this is the easiest, cleanest path for both municipalities, is to have both separately allow for the encroachment into the setback. So, I mean, we didn't continue down the road of looking into the replatting just because we were advised to, you know, come this way first. So
What about the
that's-
city of Austin? Do they have setbacks too that you'd run into or not?
Not for this. There was one little thing they were looking at with their supervisor that they haven't gotten back to yet, but no, they haven't requested any variance for that setback for the driveway.
This is interesting just from the perspective of the way the law works on variances, which I'm sure y'all know, is that this is a driveway on a separate piece of property to serve a separate piece of property, both individually platted as separate lots. Actually two, I guess it's gonna go through two. And the variance process requires you not to look at the property that they want the driveway to get to, but to look at the property where they're requesting the variance. And the law says, and our code says, that there has to be some special circumstance or condition with the topography, natural obstructions, aesthetic or environmental considerations affecting the property where they want to put the driveway that creates this unnecessary hardship. So it's a little weird, right? I mean, you can't really be looking at it from, well, they can't access this third piece of property because of a setback on this other property. You really have to look at this property where they're requesting the variance to determine, is there something unique about that piece of property that creates the unnecessary hardship? It's really, this is a unique situation.
And trying to get to Laura Lane. I mean, that's, if we even have to remove Stratford from the discussion, that there is a hardship on getting to Laura to access that piece of property from Chris Cove.
Well, there's other ways for that too, right? For easements, access.
Well, it's for both properties. It's for Laura and Chris. Am I understanding what you're saying?
I might be confused on which one
Well,
you're
but
talking about.
there is no, as I understand it right now, we're not
Yeah.
talking about any variances that cross those to the Laura
You don't
Lane
grant
and
variances
the-
for landlocked lands. You grant
the Chris Cove properties.
easements, access
Right.
ease.
Because looking at your
easements.
site plan, your driveways go from Alamo to the Stratford property and from the Stratford property to
Chris Cove to
And there's
Stratford,
nothing
Stratford to
going
Laura.
from Rollwood to Variance.
No, there is a access easement in there.
If there's
I
an
think
access easement, I
between
think
those
that
two
takes it away.
driveways, but no,
But
you're
you're not
correct.
requesting anything to
No,
Okay.
correct.
That's a difference versus what you just said.
Okay, well then let's close the public hearing, unless if anyone else wants to say anything. Okay, it is 6:20, we are closing the public hearing, so I guess this is our time to talk amongst ourselves. Does anyone want to start what they think about this? I guess I'll start. I'm just having a really hard time seeing a hardship here because there is another path. I don't think the Board of Adjustments is here as a, let's make this easier for you. It's here as we don't have any other choice. Like, we can't get around this. Give us a way of getting around it. And we either with replatting or or what was the yeah. There's other ways of doing it. And I think maybe if everything else was shut down and we saw that there was no other options, then we could start discussing why that is a hardship. But as far as right now, I don't think that there's a hardship until the other paths that are made available for you to treat multiple lots as one lot have been exhausted. I don't know how anyone else feels about that.
Jerry Spitel, in the grand scheme of things, I see the landlocked lot as troublesome and certainly, depending upon circumstances, could be considered hardship. But I certainly can't consider that the Stratford lot has a hardship just because because the driveway's on a curve. I mean, there's all sorts of driveways in Rollingwood that are on some pretty steep curves and hills, and likewise that's true for Stratford. So I just can't buy that's the hardship. But I also agree with Brad that we should be the court of last resort in terms of dealing with this, not the first.
So I had a question about the driveway. They can't move the driveway, so it's not in the setback? Is that
They're
just
trying to cross a lot line,
It's
so
not-
there's a setback between lots.
from the,
Yeah, they're
second
crossing
lot.
crossing lot lines
Okay.
three
So a driveway is
three
going
different
from one
places.
lot to another.
Yeah, so it's not
right,
possible.
it's not where it is on Chris Cove. It's not that it's in the setback.
It's going completely, the driveway is going the whole lot of Chris Cove is their driveway.
It's the back lot.
They're going the back side, the lot on
Right.
Chris Cove, they're going off the
All
back
these
side
are
of that lot.
inside the valley. According to the law, inside of the setback.
And so it's just because they want to go out, in and out that way. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that lot. It's flat, I don't see the hardship on that lot.
All right, well, I think since our training, we kind of have to talk about these things a little bit more, even though I think we kind of know where we stand on this, but we should still go ahead and touch upon. So, under section 107-492 of the city code, let me just pull this up so I'm not. Under C, we already kind of discussed point 1, where a special individual reason that makes a literal enforcement of this chapter result in an unnecessary hardship. We've already discussed that. Let's just quickly run through these. Do we really have to talk about each one?
Well,
I don't.
Well, if you run into one that would prevent you from
Sure.
granting the variance, you don't have to go through the other ones.
Okay, it just kind of seemed like in our training before they were like, you got to talk about each one.
You should go through them to the extent, you go, okay, this finding is good, we're all right. You should go through them in that context, but if you come up against one where somebody believes that is enough, right? You don't have to go through the rest of them.
Okay. All right, does anyone else want to talk about this one a little bit more?
I want to talk about number 3 for a second.
What do you mean?
Item number 3 on C3.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Just, I disagree with Mr. Mellon about this being affirmative. I can see us, and I'm only bringing this up in the context of there's the city of Austin and the city of Rollingwood. If all 3 of these properties were sitting in Rollingwood, I wouldn't say what I'm about to say. And Charlie's going to tell me when I'm wrong, when I'm done, but I'm going to go there and see where it is. I can see a scenario in where the homeowners decide they do this, and then they decide they want to sell, leave, or rent. We have no control over Austin's policies. That house could become a short-term rental, could become a party house, could become a party house every single weekend. And since there's no parking on Stratford for this house, all of the parking and all the traffic will be going through Chris Cove, which is one of the quietest parts in our city. So that, I think, would be not good for property values around it and could be injurious to the neighbors as far as what they're used to dealing with. Again, not an issue if all 3 lots were in Rollingwood, because we can have policy, we control that, we can enforce it, but we have no enforcement over a property inside of the city of Austin and what they do. So that would be a side effect of allowing that particular access to happen. So that's why I think that on that issue, I would also say it's a problem.
That also kind of ties in with I think 2 and 3 are kind of similar in saying that it's just all about the harmony and the general purpose of the ordinances. So I think that would apply to that one too. And again, just to kind of touch on these a little bit more, number 4 about there being a special circumstance, such as topography or natural obstructions. Now, I kind of read this one not as that we have to find a natural obstruction. The way it's worded, it says such as, but it's still saying that there needs to be a special circumstance why they needed this, and again, that's just a hardship, and I'm not finding that. I think the rest of them are kind of self-explanatory. Keith, I want to say anything?
I'm okay, I'm fine.
Then I believe it is proper that we move to approve, not deny, because the way the voting works. So I will move to approve the variance. So just so everyone knows how that works, we move to approve it, and then we vote on approving it, and then everyone saying no makes it so it isn't passed, as opposed to moving to deny it. Here, you want to?
So it's a weird law. It takes a 4 of the 5 of you to approve, and the best way to handle that is to make a motion to approve, and if only 1 of the 5 or 2 of the 5 or 3 of the 5 vote aye and the remainder vote no, then that fails and we can move on. You don't have to do a motion to deny.
Okay. So
Doing a motion to deny just creates confusion, because then if that motion to deny fails, you've got to actually do another motion to approve. So we prefer an affirmative motion to approve and to see if that passes. If it doesn't, then you move on.
All right, so I move to approve the variance at, let's see, the variance from section 107-036 to allow the driveway to occupy the setback at 2 Chris Cove in Lot A. Alamo? Is it Alamo? I don't know.
Alamo A, because they couldn't get an address for it.
Okay, and based on the findings under the city ordinance code, section 107-492. Then we need someone to second.
Second.
Okay, we need to do a roll call vote. So state your name and then say yes or no, right?
Right, Charlie, one more time, just the one sentence version. If I say yay to this, I'm saying yay to.
If you say yes to this, it means you're approving the variance. If you say no to this, it means you disapprove the variance.
Okay, got it.
So we're doing roll call vote, so we'll start with you. State your name and what you vote.
Susan Hinton, nay.
Kevin Shell, no.
Jerry Spitel, no.
Brad O'Donnell, no.
Keith Martinson, no.
The motion to approve the variance is denied. Do I need to state the time?
Sure.
It is 6:30. Is that it?
That's it.
All right.
That's it, sorry.
Moving on to public hearing agenda number 4. It is the discussion and possible action on a request for special exemption pursuant to section 107-491A1, allowing for the reconstruction of a non-conforming building or structure that has been damaged by fire or other cause. We will open up the public hearing at 6:30. Would you all like to present? Actually, can I talk before she?
Yes, sir.
Okay, this is the first time we have done a special exemption. This is not a variance.
Correct. Special exception.
special exception, sorry. And just so everyone knows, to pass a special exception, the main criteria is that prior to granting a special exception, the board shall make a finding that it is empowered under this chapter to grant the special exception, that the public convenience and welfare will not be substantially or permanently injured in the granting of the special exception, and that the grant of the special exception will not adversely affect the public health, convenience, safety, or general welfare. And to find that we are empowered, we move up in the code a little bit, and there's 5 different things that we can find. One, which I believe is what today is going to be referring to, is that, so the board, in a specific case where the board makes findings required under subsection C, which is what I just read, grant the following special exceptions from the requirements of this division. And the reasons why you can feel empowered, number 1, which I believe applies today, is to permit the reconstruction of a non-conforming building or structure that has been damaged by fire or other cause. I hate reading out loud, so I'm not going to read the rest. I'll let y'all read that on your own time. But that's what we're here to figure out, is if what they're presenting today, if it is, if we are going to permit the reconstruction of a non-conforming building or structure that has been damaged by fire or other cause.
I got a question, Charles.
Yes, sir.
Is 2 votes will kill this, or do you need just a majority?
4 people need to vote in favor.
Okay, thank you.
All decisions of the board have to be by 3/4, so 4 of the 5 have to vote in the affirmative.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Katya Smith, and I am the owner of Pickwick, which is the one under consideration. What happened is last fall I was approved for my building permits, and according to that we proceeded after we had met all the requirements for that, and upon demolition we realized that the majority of the structure is really not up to code, and it is not safe. So after speaking with my builder, who is here, the city engineer wrote a letter, and my personal engineer wrote a letter. All the findings were that the best solution for safety and moving forward were to rebuild it from the ground up. I don't know if you have a copy of it, but like the city engineer wrote the term, the worst I've ever seen, but it's close to that. Original roof trusses that luckily haven't collapsed, and yet basic framing done incorrectly all along the way. The lot would be unusable as designed. The hardship is not self-imposed. Then my engineer wrote, Copeland Engineering believes a more effective and safe solution to be a complete tear down and rebuild. And then based on that, I'm asking that we do take into consideration the special exemption for reconstruction of non-conforming building damaged by other, as well as looking at the values of section 107.422, where it states that this code is not to prevent the restoration to a safe condition of any non-conforming building or structure or portion thereof declared to be unsafe by the building official or other duly other authorized official.
I think we'd like to hear more about why it's unsafe.
Yes. And there are pictures from both the city engineer as well as my engineer in the files. I don't know.
Yes, yes, we've seen this.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nicholas Fair. I'm with EEF Custom Homes. We're the builder on the property. As Katja mentioned earlier, when we started doing the demolition of the house, we noticed that a lot of the existing structure is not built per code. And there are screws missing where screws are supposed to be. So if you leave that structure in place, it will eventually collapse the way it is right now. That's why we deem it as an unsafe structure to work on.
Okay. I've seen the structural engineer reports and whatnot, so I mean, definitely a lot of bigwigs saying that it's bad. Did the city have a presentation from?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair,
Brandon.
I do.
Okay, great. You all set?
I'll go ahead and proceed with that if you'd like.
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. Thank you again, Mr. Chair, members of the board. As the applicant pointed out, they had plans originally to do some substantial renovations to the structure that would have been under 50%. And the more they got into the construction, they realized that the alterations to the structure were going to be over 50%. And so that's an issue because the structure is considered legally non-conforming. When it was constructed, I don't have the historical on what the setbacks were at that time, but as it currently is situated right now, it's substantially located in the front side yard setbacks. So because of that, it's considered legally non-conforming, and in the code says you can't do more than 50% alterations to the structure. And so in this case, as pointed out, the applicant has the option for a special exception. They also have the option for a variance as well. But in this case, the applicant has taken the special exception route. And so that is the mechanism by which we're making the evaluation tonight. The board's making the evaluation. So the code, again, provides some real clear direction to the board on the criteria for y'all to use in your evaluation. And so just as staff support, provide some assistance to y'all, again, from a planning standpoint. Just kind of went through and section 107.491, the zoning code states, prior to granting a special exception, the board shall make a finding that it is empowered under this chapter to grant the special exception, that the public convenience and welfare will not be substantially or permanently injured in the granting of the special exception, and that the grant of the special exception will not adversely affect the public health, convenience, safety, or general welfare. So that's one paragraph, but generally it's got kind of three criteria in it in one sentence. So I broke down basically the three criteria in there and provided y'all with a planning analysis of that. So breaking down that statement, one, does the question to be asked is, does the board find that it is in fact empowered under this chapter to grant the special exception? So in trying to answer that question, really the question to be asked is, in my planning opinion, the question to be asked is, does it meet the kind of the stipulation in the code which says if granted a special exception or a special exception can be granted by the board to permit the reconstruction of a non-conforming building or structure that has been damaged by fire or other cause. So essentially the question to be asked is, is what's going on here damaged? That's, from a planning standpoint, that's the question that I was attempting to answer when looking at this this criteria. Is this considered damage, or is it something else? And so, frankly, in order to do that, I looked up the American Planning Association dictionary, which is a go-to for planners like me for a definition of what's damage. Didn't have it, so I ended up having to go straight to the Oxford Dictionary just to find a definition of damage. That's kind of our process for creating a general decision. And so the definition of damage in the Oxford Dictionary is physical harm caused to something in such a way as to impair its value, usefulness, or normal function. So really looking at that, again, this is from a planning standpoint. So based on that definition, my finding was that it was poor original craftsmanship at the time of original construction. It's because of that the current structure has been physically harmed over time, as was just discussed. Due to that poor construction, it's been physically harmed over time, and to the point that, as discussed, its value, usefulness, and normal function is impaired from a safety standpoint. So looking at this criteria through the filter of that particular definition, I think, the poor craftsmanship has damaged this house. So my planning analysis, planning standpoint, I think it meets that caveat that in terms of empowerment. Criteria 2, does the board find that the public convenience and welfare will not be substantially or permanently injured in the granting of the special exception? found affirmative on that also. This structure has existed there for a long time, and hasn't caused any injury or inconvenience to the welfare of the public. It looks like it could have potentially caused some injury to the inhabitants, but it hasn't caused some energy. It hasn't caused any injury to the welfare of the public. As such, rebuilding the structure's current location wouldn't cause any injury. It's provided it's built back in the same footprint. And that last criteria from that paragraph, does the board find that the granting of special exception will not adversely affect the public health, convenience, safety, or general welfare? I found affirmative on this one. Again, same logic. The structure has existed at this location for a long time, hasn't adversely affected the public health, convenience, safety, or general welfare, and as such, rebuilding it back as it's currently situated in its current footprint would not either. So those are my findings as assistance to the board in making your decision. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you very much. Again, very
Yes, sir.
thorough.
I guess I have several questions. Do we know if a variance was granted for the original construction of this house?
No, it probably wasn't because it's non-conforming, which means if a variance had been granted, it would not have been non-conforming. It would have been conforming, subject to the variance. But I'll defer to staff as to whether or not anything exists in the files. Yeah.
What would be the variance be for?
Well, because for it not being in the setback.
If they had granted if they had granted a variance, it wouldn't be non-conforming because a variance would have been granted to allow it to be in the setback, so it would be a conforming structure subject to the variance that was granted to it.
So I gather that we're surmising that the setback rules were different when this house was constructed.
They were either
Or
different or
non-existent.
it didn't or it got past someone missed it. It could be any number of reasons why it's currently there. Maybe the applicant has information.
So I don't know the exact history, but I bought this house from the original owner who built it in 1972. He told me that originally the house on the right-hand side where Nixon is, that road was not there when the house was built, and that the road was added after the house was built. I'm not entirely sure if that's accurate, but that is what he told me when I purchased the home.
Yeah, okay. But that wouldn't satisfy the Nixon setback issue, but, okay. I guess the other question I have, all sorts of houses in Rollingwood wouldn't meet current code. Did this house meet the code at the time of its construction? Or are you saying that that even 1972 code is the question of whether the house meets that code, not whether it meets current code?
I think that's kind of unknown.
Yeah, I would be guessing.
Well, no, I'm not asking you. I'm asking you. I'm not asking you. I'm asking
Yeah.
the construction guys you brought with you.
I think it's not so much even current code, it is the fact that it has been damaged and is not safe anymore.
Based upon what we've seen in the structure, at the time it was built, it didn't meet the code at the time.
Okay, thank you. And I guess I just have one final question. Should all of this been obvious before we got to this point? You pointed out that sloping floors and out of plumb walls, you didn't even need to rip off the sheetrock to know that there was a problem with this house.
Well, it's hard to know what was behind the drywall. We can make multiple assumptions in terms of either the drywall was installed the wrong way and that's why the wall is out of plumb, or the flooring was damaged by a flood that happened before Ms. Smith bought the house and caused it to slope the way it sloped it. So there's no certain way that we can pinpoint it until we rip everything off and examine the structure and make that determination. That's the reason why in all the structural drawings, you'll see that there's a note, and I think that needs to be there for the city to approve it, to where we have completely removed all the drywall and we have the house back to the stud, that the structural engineer of record would go and visit the job site and deem the structure if it's compliant or non-compliant. And in this case, between the structural engineer and the city inspector, they deemed it as non-compliant. there was no way for us to find out prior to that.
Thank you.
Questions? Any more presentations? All right, it's 6:46. Let's close the public hearing and talk amongst ourselves. Anyone want to start off? You'll force me to do it. I'll do it. I've always been under the strong feelings that everyone has the right to fix something that is broken. And I see that they've chosen a path doing a special exception that grants them the ability to fix things that are. And as far as I see it, you know, you buy a house, let's say that, you know, as your point of view, the foundation sloped. I mean, I've bought tons of homes where the foundation slopes, but that doesn't mean that the house is physically is unsafe to live in. They obviously found this out after the fact, so this wasn't anything of their doing. I don't think this was like some malicious thing where they went in and ruined their house so they could get a special exception. And so as far as I see it, the house is damaged, it's unsafe, they want to fix it. This is good in my book.
I look at the owner, try to do what was right in the city, to do a remodel under 50%, so it was out of code, so if you can do a remodel, it has to be under 50%, and that's what she wanted to do. And then he gets in the house and finds out, I have a house that has cut studs, it has big bore holes in the studs, it has out slope, it has bad trusses. I mean, what are you supposed to do in a situation like that? You buy a house, assuming it's passing inspection, where you just look at the plumbing and the electrical, you don't look at the drywall.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, you know, I agree with you, Brad, that it's not her fault that we're in the situation. She's trying to make the best do of what she has.
So I guess I have a question about, I agree with everything that's been said, but for the special exemption, does that, I understand rebuilding in the same footprint.
That's a good question because that's what everything was implying.
Yeah,
If we say if we grant this, what are we actually?
They get to build it back on the, where it's currently located, on the same footprint.
Is that
If-
implied by granting the variance, or do we have to?
No, you don't.
I'm not
you-
granting the variance.
You can
granting
make
the-
that a condition, but it is a requirement of the law that they build it back in the same footprint. They can't increase, I guess technically they don't have to build it back on the same footprint. They just can't increase the non-conforming use.
Okay.
So if they wanted to do that, they'd have to come back for a special exception. For a variance.
Okay.
The special exception allows them, by the specific language in it, to
the wording in section 107.491 is permit the reconstruction.
reconstruction, yeah. And
And-
so that would be, in my mind, that's reconstructing on, I don't think it's pier and beam, right? It's probably
Slab.
engineered slab, right? So they're gonna have to build it back on the engineered slab that is currently there.
Okay, good. So that's
So on
implied.
the slab, the existing slab, is that, or just in the same space?
Yeah, the existing, well, if they wanted to, if there was a problem with the engineered slab and it needed to be repoured, it would have to be repoured in the same
Okay.
location.
So they have that option if they.
Yes, they don't have to, if the slab doesn't, who knows,
Okay.
perhaps the slab
Yeah.
isn't engineered. I would hope not for your sake, but perhaps the slab isn't engineered properly either, I don't know. But yes, they could do that, but it would have to be in the same location.
Okay, so one more thing, and by the way, this is my nightmare scenario, living in an old house in Rollingwood, so I get it. Does that also imply granting this that the new structure will have to be completely in compliance with all of our other?
They would have to do that anyway. They have to build the home consistent with the International Residential Code. Is that what you're asking?
Well, I thought there were, and I'm gonna get some of this wrong, but I thought if you remodeled under 50%, you didn't have to do certain fire safety things and things like that.
Okay, I don't know the building codes, but they're taking a house completely down and rebuilding a new house, and they're gonna have to completely comply with all of those codes.
Okay, so we're only,
You're not giving them any sort of exception to the building codes, only to the ability to rebuild the house where it currently is at. If they would like a variance from those codes, that's a whole different process that they would have to go through.
I'm assuming y'all understand that. Okay. Good. That's all I have.
Anyone want to say anything else? Okay, then let's think about how to do this. I move to approve the special exception after finding it meets the requirement of a special exception in the City of Rolling Wood Code of Ordinance, Section 107 dash 491. And it is the request for a special exception pursuant to section, it says it here. So, special exception pursuant to section 107-491A1, allowing for the reconstruction of a non-conforming building or structure that has been damaged by fire. Do I need to say any addresses or anything, or are we all set?
No, we're fine. You're only taking action on the item before you.
Okay, great.
And
Is
did your
there a
motion include the specific affirmative findings that it complies with the affirmative findings required in 107-491?
Well, I think I said because we found that it met the requirements.
Very good. All right.
Under section 107-491.
Yes, sir.
Second?
So this will be a roll call vote. If we can start to the right and say your name and your vote.
Susan Hinton, aye.
Kevin Shell, aye.
Jerry Spitel, yes.
Brad O'Donnell, yes.
Keith Martinson, yes.
The special exception is approved. We will close agenda item number 4 at 6:52. Next item is the adjournment.
I have one thing I want to, can I say
sure.
one thing first? I don't know how to do this, so I want to make for the next meeting that we have, I want to put something on the agenda item to discuss if we want to formally request the mayor, city council, staff to get us a complete packet, evidence packet, some amount of time prior to the meeting. That's not
How
enough.
about we just work with staff to make sure that happens in the future?
Well, I've watched every city meeting for the last 2 years. Every meeting has the same problem. This meeting, though, is the last chance saloon for people. So for residents to be able to actually see it, for us to be able to prepare for these people, make sure we give
I
them a
agree
fair
with you.
thing. This is different than every other one.
Yeah.
So that's why I have this discussion. And if we as a group say, let's just let staff do it, fine. But if we want to have something more formal, we need to go, hey, city, do something.
Well,
So I'm trying to help Ashley here by not.
Did I hear the question to be you just want to make sure you get the packet well in advance of the meeting, or did I may have
That's
misheard you?
where I'm going. I'm not asking for any more work. I'm just asking for when the work gets done.
Yeah, I think that's a legitimate request, and if you want to formally ask council to request staff to do that, I suppose you can, but
I just want to have.
you have the authority as a body to get what you believe you're entitled to for your body.
Right, but we can't, I'm saying if we put it on the agenda for the next meeting, we actually have a discussion, make sure we.
You can put that on the next
'cause
agenda.
we can't talk about that today, can we?
No, we really can't, but on the other hand, I think that your staff member gets what you're trying to accomplish.
Totally understand. Was not our intent to be having such late additions to the packet. Clearly, it's a current staff turnover that we're trying to manage, and we will do much better. That is not how we like to run a packet either. So we tried to get most everything in on Friday. We understand it was very last minute. We will do better.
Yeah, and to be clear, I'm not
And-
pointing any fingers. I'm not trying to, I'm actually bringing this up to try to help you.
Sure.
Because I do appreciate how hard it is to get all
I
this done
can,
at the last second.
I can assure you,
Yeah.
putting it on your next agenda for a full discussion is not gonna help her.
No, we very
Well-
much intend to do that.
I think there's some
Hey,
people
and,
that might listen to this.
and
and might
Brandon,
get the spirit of it.
Brandon here with K-Freeze too, absolutely. And I really enjoyed working with you guys this time. I actually, I had a little bit of a learning curve on this one, so I didn't get the staff report to Ashley, one of them to her until yesterday, and the other one this morning. So that's, I gotta fess up a little blame on me on that one, but I got a learning curve here, and next time, depending on how long I'm in the game helping you guys out, I'll get it to her sooner next time. So I wanted
That
to
was super
accept a
helpful.
little blame for that.
Also, stay tuned for some exciting updates to our development services department. Because while we're doing this, we're implementing some other things that we're hoping is going to make everything expedited and a lot easier. So we hope to have our stuff together by next meeting. So anyways.
Excellent. Well, on that note, it is 6:56. I move to adjourn the meeting. Is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.
Thank y'all. Have a great night.
Bye, Brandon.
Thank y'all.